Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Addie and this is my May wrap-up. So I read 8 books in the month of May. 4 were for the Because We Can readathon, 2 were for the Asian readathon, and 2 books were for trying to get myself out of a reading slump. So I have not had a great reading month. The first thing I need to address is the Asian readathon TBR that I had. I will be picking those books up at a later date. Just at the point when I realized that I was not going to be reading for the rest of the month, I decided to go ahead and send those back so that people that were behind me in line to read those books could get a hold of them. So that is what I did. The other thing I need to address is the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests against police brutality. I am 100% in favor of both of those. I have not been an activist on this platform or on my book Twitter. However, I do want to say I have been very vocal on my personal channels, so I really just tunnel visioned and focused in on my local community. I do not want to be somebody that is participating in optical or performative activism. I want to do what I can to help and learn and to also help others help and learn, and so that was what I was focused on. So I'm sorry if it appeared that I was being silent on the issue. That was not my intent, and I am gonna leave the Black Lives Matter links below and also a link to the ACLU. I know that this issue is not going to go away in a weekend, in an hour, in a month, in a year. Like, this is going to be an ongoing battle for a very, very long time. So it's really important that I try to dedicate myself to giving this the best opportunity it has to succeed. With that being said, if you are not registered to vote, please get registered to vote and really focus on your local level governments, even more so than the federal government, because if I've learned anything from this COVID-19 crisis, it's that the people that are here for you and that are really going to try to protect you are your mayors, your governors, your state senate, your state representatives, you know, like all of that. Your local governments are really important, and that is where you are going to see the quickest and best amount of change. And they are so important. I know that there is this thought of disenfranchisement with voting. A lot of people are disenfranchised towards voting, and like, if you don't feel like your voice matters, you don't feel like your vote counts or anything like that, like, do it out of spite, just so that the momentum behind the Black Lives Matter movement, behind these protests against police brutality, so that these movements can continue forward and that they continue to carry the momentum, and that we are not allowing the oppressor to come back in and say, well, they didn't come in and they didn't vote for these things. So this is something that is happening all over the world, and if you can vote, do so, and vote for people that are going to be sympathetic to your causes. That's my little activism note, and I just feel like it's very important, because I do not want us to drop the ball and not cover all of the bases, and to let the oppressors, the people that are out here trying to oppress people, I don't want to give them a back door to slip out of, so that this comes back around next week, next month, next year, the next 20 years, the next 40 years, you know, like, so that people in the future do not have to fight the same battle over and over again. So that is going to be my political activism. Thank you for listening, and I will now go on to talk about the books. So the first book that I read this month was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ning for the Asian Readathon, and this book was fabulous, man. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really liked the different like takes on motherhood, and you know, like what people will do to protect their children, and like what even constitutes someone as a parent, and just all of the different looks at that. It was very cool. I gave it 4 or 5 stars. It was absolutely fabulous. I also just finished watching the show with my mom, and she absolutely enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and I like a lot of the things that they changed in the show to make it have more depth and to, you know, make it more compelling. So it was really good. Highly recommend it. And that was the first book I read for the Asian Readathon. The next book I tried to read for the Asian Readathon was Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi. I DNF'd this book. I do believe that this is the first official DNF on this channel. So I picked up this book. I thought it was going to be great. I didn't know anything about it to start off with. I thought it was going to be like a psychological thriller kind of type thing. And then she ended up having like superpowers, and then they were like actually superpowers. So that was really interesting and very cool. However, it was also more about the like love triangle thing that was going on, and I just don't like either of the options for the love triangle. I don't like how they treat her. I don't like how they are acting. I don't want to become sympathetic towards one or the other. So I decided that I didn't really care about what was going on in this book. So that's why I DNF'd it. Other than that, it was very interesting. I liked Tahira Mafi's writing style. It was very cool. I like how she had a note at the very beginning. She was all like, basically all of the grammar mistakes are on purpose. So just like leave me alone. She was like, I know what I'm doing. Thank you, next. And I love that. So I highly recommend it if you like love triangles and, you know, like you like relationship drama. That was not something that I was interested in. But if you like that, you might enjoy the series. I DNF'd that one, so I didn't rate it or anything, so it was just a DNF. The next 4 books that I read were for the Because We Can Readathon, and I started off with Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi, and I was a little disappointed in this book, but it was not necessarily because I was disappointed in the world or anything like that. It was just that the characters were so freaking frustrating for me. I'm not somebody that does very well in situations where I'm like reading about people that keep, you know, making decisions and then backing out of them. So it just felt like the whole time I was reading this book that like every single character was like, I made this decision, I'm gonna stick to it, and then they would like run up to the cliff and then refuse to jump off, even though they had already decided to go cliff diving. So I just was very frustrated. I will be continuing the series. I do want to know what happens next because I think they figured out what the main villain of this is, and so they're gonna continue on, and I think it's gonna get better. Like, I think that this might be a symptom of it just being a second book, you know, just like one of those things. But it was a 3 of 5 stars because I still like the world. It was just the characters were very, very frustrating in this one. I'm not willing to write it off yet though, because I do think it has potential to get better. Okay, so the next book that I read was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This was a 5-star book, so I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's basically a retelling of Cinderella, where Cinderella is a cyborg and they're in the future, and there is a race of people that live on the moon called Lunars, and then there are people on Earth, and you know, there's just like a lot of things. The Lunars are trying to take over Earth, and so Cinder has to work with the prince to just kind of try to prevent that. And there is a plague that is going around where people are getting sick and they are like dying and everything. So that was a little relevant to today's times, and there was a lot of trying to figure out how to solve that whole issue. So I highly recommend that series just in general. It was fabulous. I had such a good time reading that, and I had just read Shatter Me, which I was struggling through, and then I read Children of Virtue and Vengeance, which I was frustrated with, and then I got to that book and it was just like, this is why I love reading. So I absolutely enjoyed it. The next book that I ended up reading was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This was a teenage whodunit kind of type thing. It was very, like, I think it's described as The Breakfast Club meets Pretty Little Liars, and what happens is that while they are in detention, this group of students, one of them has an allergic to peanuts and he dies after drinking out of this cup of water, and so then it becomes a moment to figure out which one of these students has killed the student. So it was interesting, it was intriguing. I don't particularly care about like Pretty Little Liars kind of type things, so I was like not super into it. But if you like that, it was great. I thought that it was a little bit predictable, but it is also a YA book, so it was meant to be maybe a little bit predictable. But other than that, I thought the characters were enjoyable. I thought the perspectives were good. I thought the writing was good, and it was just something that wasn't in my wheelhouse. So there's that one. It was a 3 of 5 stars because of that. The next book and final book that I read for the Because We Can Readathon was A Light in the Attic. I was struggling to read so badly at this moment. I just decided to like nix out my Dan Brown book that I was going to read for the Because We Can Readathon, and I just went ahead and took it out and put in a childhood favorite of poetry. So I read that. It is very nostalgic. There were like some issues in it that I just didn't foresee happening, and considering it was written like 40 years ago or something, I don't know. It was written a very, very long time ago, and I was not shocked that there was stuff in there that I was like a little bit cringy on. So it was still like a 4 or 5 stars, but just from the nostalgia feel, but also there were some issues that I had with it. Okay, so after that, I read a couple books trying to get out of a reading slump because I was firmly in one at that point. I just did not want to read at all. And so I got a hold of Blue Lily, Lily Blue, which is the 3rd book in the Raven cycle, and I read it and it was good. I struggled through it a little bit, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was like a 4 of 5 stars. And then after that, I read Useless Magic by Florence Welch, which is just a collection of her poetry and also the like song lyrics from some of her songs and stuff like that. So that was an interesting book for me just because I enjoy song lyrics and I enjoy Florence Welch, and I really just had a good time reading it, which is something that was like, okay, you like reading, like this is a thing, you're okay. So it was just something short and sweet and, you know, like very heavy metaphors that were very like obvious of what the metaphors and stuff were. So I like was enjoying that. Other than that, there was also some photography in Useless Magic that I was just like, these are so over the head metaphors that I am like so happy that I like connected this like picture of her laying on this like blue satin something, blue silk like lounge or something like that. It was like, it looks like Ophelia or like the Lady of Shalott or something like that, and was just like at 4 a.m. reading this going like, oh, I love it when we see, you know, connections between what the songs are saying and what this like literary trope, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say, like this symbol, I guess is what I want to say, means. And so I really enjoyed that part of Useless Magic as well. Alright, so that is it for this video. If you liked it, please hit like. If you really liked it, hit subscribe, and I will see you the next time I see you with a video. So, I will talk to y'all later. Have a great night. Goodbye.